Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, folks, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Around the country this past week, severe storms caused a lot of headache for growers, not just across the Midwest, but truly everywhere in this nation. And that's been a challenge for a lot of folks this growing season. Joining me now to talk about agronomy for your acres with our friends from Nutrien Ag Solutions is Jeremy Leniger. He's a sales manager with Nutrien there in Vandalia, Illinois. And Jeremy, rain was a challenge, I know, in your neck of the woods early on. How have things developed as the growing seasons move forward?
Yeah, we got a week to run. It was about a week, the week right before Easter, we had a week to run, and we were able to get a lot accomplished, but it was a short time span and it was fairly early. So, but after that, we got knocked out for it was a better part of a month, and we were just wondering if we were ever going to be able to get back into the fields. And then finally, the right conditions hit, and we have been able to get everything pretty much in the ground. And since then, the rains that have came have been extremely favorable. We'll catch maybe an inch here, half inch there, but everything looks phenomenal in our area right now.
That is good to hear. So when you're talking with your growers there around Vandalia, where are we in the season? What's the next important pass for the growers in your neck of the woods?
So the majority of the corn right now in our area is between that V4, V5 stage, some a little less, some a little more, but we're getting ready to make that second pass of herbicide application. And whenever we're making that herbicide application, we want to take into consideration some other things that may need to go into the tank. One of the things that I want my growers to know is that I would rather them be proactive instead of reactive. With these wetter conditions that we've received, that can be a breeding ground for disease. So I highly recommend a fungicide application at this pass. And, that way, if we go out there and check and we see a disease is out there in the field, it's just like you or I, whenever we start to cough or show symptoms of a cold, it's probably a little too late. That disease has been present in the plant. And so we need to address it before that disease starts to show symptomology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as I think about that. When you get that cough, when you get that runny nose, the goal is to be proactive, right? And do the steps that can nip it in the bud. When you're thinking proactivity for your growers, what does that look like? Are you just automatically incorporating a fungicide?
Yeah, a lot of times we will put a fungicide out there. And even if you just take away the disease factor, because that can vary from year to year on what kind of disease is going to be in the area, maybe hybrid dependent, maybe whatever hybrid it is you're planting doesn't have as strong a disease tolerance to certain things. It'll help with plant health overall too. Even if there's not a disease that's necessarily present, it's going to help with stress mitigation, whether it's too wet, not, drouthy, whatever that may be. It's going to help with plant health too.
I know one of the tools that's out there is the STAT, the Soil Test Analysis tool. Jeremy, fill us in. What is that and how does it work?
So that is a tool that was developed by Nutrien, and basically what it is we go out and get a soil sample taken of the grower's field, and whenever we get the results back, we are able to punch it into this document, and it helps us to predict what we may fall short of, problem areas in the field, gives us the correct ratios, and just really helps us what I'm going to term not just spray and pray. We're not just throwing micronutrients out there. Although the plant may need some of them, it can help us to get a more dialed in approach and apply the right amounts of nutrients that crop needs at the correct timing.
That makes a lot of sense. With margins where they're at, you want to utilize the tools as you need to. Jeremy Leniger, Sales Manager with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Folks, you can learn more by visiting nutrienagsolutions.com. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with the news and information about our markets at farmfutures.com. Joining us this week to talk about the changes in the commodity markets is Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing up in Britton, South Dakota. Dwayne, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
Before we jump into the markets, give us an update. How are things looking there across northeast South Dakota? I know you guys have caught some ample rain here in the past 10 days.
Well, yeah, that's just it. We were looking very good, got everything planted, but we did have some extra rain. So we do have some potholes full of water again, which is just something we deal with up here. But I think it's probably important for me to point out we did get things planted. So corn acres will be up in the Dakotas.
All right. We'll talk about acreage here on the grains in just a little bit. But Dwayne, I want to start things off this week in the cattle market. We've continued to see this market move higher, beef prices move higher, but it seems like maybe some risk has emerged for cattle traders. What are you watching here for live cattle as we head into this next week?
The headlines mostly, man, all over the board, right? I mean, I love what USDA did with their 5-point plan to stop screwworm, but I noticed a hole in it a little bit, and it's nobody's fault, but it just takes time to do these things. In one of their plans, it's to produce the sterile male fly, and that's what we did back in the 60s to stop screwworm. The problem is, like, the factory we're building in southern Texas won't be operational till the end of this year. And Mexico is obviously trying to help and fight too. That one isn't, they're building factory too. That won't be operational till the end of 2026. So that leaves us vulnerable here in the short term.
And if we do see a screwworm, if the worst case happens, we see an outbreak here in the U.S., from a market perspective, Dwayne, what would you expect to see happen on the live cattle side?
I've heard some people say it could be a bullish thing, less production. Sadly, I can't disagree more. These algros, these computer traders follow the headlines, and there's no way a flesh-eating larvae is going to come with a bullish headline. I don't think so. I would think it'd be quite negative to the market. And remember, those funds are record long feeders. So if they want out, there's not enough buyers to offset that.
All right, so that's an issue there. We'll continue to watch. Hopefully the biosecurity practices at the border will keep us exempt from that. But domestically, I understand we've also got concerns at packing plants that are starting to develop. Dwayne, what are the issues you're watching there?
All right, that's another headline here lately, that ICE is going to be in raiding, forcing immigrants back to their, illegal immigrants, I should say, back to their countries. And just the scare of that has actually created a problem. Last week, immigrant workers didn't even go to work because they were worried ICE was going to be there. Well, that backed up slaughter and really lowered the number of cattle that were slaughtered last week. Now, that created a sharply higher box beef price, so that helped packer profit margins. But if no one's going to work to kill the cattle, that's a problem, obviously. So I haven't seen any news articles or headlines that ICE actually did raid any packing plants, but just the scare of it alone created quite a market stir.
So for cattle producers looking at these still close to record high valuations, certainly abnormally high from a historical perspective, and these risks on the horizon, Dwayne, how are you managing that risk for your producers as we get deeper into summer?
Well, that's probably the thing to take away from this. There's a lot of headlines and everyone wants to know Dwayne is the high end, and which I think I've called 3 times already. So I don't know why everyone keeps asking me, but the point I would like to make is you have to be hedged up here at these record levels. With these uncertainties hanging out there, I get very nervous. If you're bullish, LRP put options still give you upside. If you're bearish and think the high is in, you can just sell the board. But man, we got to protect these levels. It's kind of scary when I think of how far this market could fall.
Given that it's so crucial to hedge, how far out are you looking to make those sales for either feedlots or cow-calf producers?
As far as we can go, actually with the unborn calf LRP, you can go into next year's production, calves that are not born yet. This crop year, these calves should already be protected. And for a lot of people, to protect at lower levels, but you can go out as far as you can. I mean, the fundamentals will remain bullish. In one way, the fundamentals have never been as bullish as they are right this week, but that doesn't mean the market can't top and go lower.
That's a great point. Folks, we'll be back with more from Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing here when we return. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with the news and information about our markets at farmfutures.com. And we're back talking about these volatile markets with Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing. And Dwayne, we talked cattle here in the first segment. I'm also hearing a lot of conversations about the hog market. We've seen an incredible rally happen there. What's driving that bullish attitude?
Lack of supply for the most part. For months, USDA's number on our hog herd size, I think, has been too high. And I think people in the industry know that. And obviously demand is good too. And then when you look at the price relationship between box beef for cattle and pork cutouts, you can see and understand why it would rally. So, but really to answer your question, is just, I don't think our supply is there. Our herd size is smaller than anticipated. Now, I don't know, this rally could stall out pretty soon though too, because I don't think China needs our pork either. Okay,
all right, so risk and reward there in the hog market as usual. Dwayne, we have seen a rally as we talk this through in the wheat market as well. What's your advice to producers here as we look at this harvest season coming in with potentially more moisture?
Well, the advice for producers for the most part has always been just hang on because nobody likes the price, right? For spring wheat, I'm kind of a $7 and higher for hedging new crop, and we've been waiting and waiting. And this wheat market, just when it felt like it'll never rally, had a great week this week. And you look at charts, there's kind of key reversals happening, and the funds are massively short that market. So as you get to the end of the quarter, they might look to take profits now that the chart pattern looks like it's formed a bottom. Remember, if you're short, the only way to make money is if the market continues to go lower. Now, what caused that is heavy rains in Kansas, Oklahoma, harvest is delayed, and then all the political tension and war premium we have out there again.
All right, so is this a time for folks to be making sales, or this rally you think can continue as we get through the end of the quarter?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we can rally. I mean, usually wheats, it's always easier to say to sell it. But no, I think you can hang on here and hope for a little bit better prices. But do remember, just because harvest is delayed doesn't mean it's not a large crop coming in the U.S. So eventually this rally would need to be sold.
All right. Corn market, Dwayne, we continue to watch some acreage shift here. We're still trying to get this year's corn crop in the ground in the eastern belt. Thoughts here on either old or new crop as you look forward?
There too, I think there's nothing for producers to do, especially the corn market. I know it gets long when we keep holding if you have old crop, but these spreads don't make any sense to me. Like they don't make any sense to anyone else. USDA is telling us we have a tight old stock situation, but the July D's corn spread looks just horrible. But I think a lot of corn moved in the winter, and I think the stuff that's still out there in farmers' hands, people are going to have to bid up for it. And then, of course, the weather. We still have a month that we can really add some weather premium in the corn market. So right now, I'd say don't do anything and just hang on.
All right. Soybeans, Dwayne, we saw some positive news from the administration last week on biofuels, renewable diesel. Has that changed the narrative in the soybean market?
Yeah, it really did. Surprisingly, soybeans have had kind of a quiet bullish market no one's really talking about. We're back up to recent highs that really broke out of the sideways range, just to the high end of it. If you've got old crop soybeans, which there's not much left, but, probably look to get those gone pretty soon. New crop, I'm starting to make some hedges there, some sales again, really from 10.50 to 11.25. My marketing plan has been to sell new crop soybeans aggressively because world stocks are still very large, Mike. We have to keep that in the back of our mind.
That's true. There are other folks around the world growing what we grow. We've got to be able to manage that risk as the season goes on, and that's why we have the tools that we do. Dwayne Bussey, thank you so much for joining us this week and for filling us in on how you're helping producers manage this volatile period.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, it's certainly been an active week for meteorologist Greg Solier tracking the impact of these severe weather events. Greg, as you look out west, do you see any severe threats in this upcoming week?
Yeah, there might be a couple of gusty thunderstorms in the Pacific Northwest. Here we are in the mid to late portions of the month of June. Feds say El Nino's over with. We don't think so. When you get this particular kind of situation here, big upper air trough making its way, its northern extent into the Pacific Northwest to the warmer front side. Storm clusters that'll be on the western flank of that huge dome of hot high pressure across the middle and eastern portions of the country. There may be some rain that reaches the ground. Watch the fire potential as well, and a couple of showers. It may extend all the way into parts of northern California into the early to middle parts of the week. That frontal boundary washes out, stalls on out. Can't make much for really south and eastward progress with that hot ridge of high pressure off the chart here and over areas east of the Red River Valley of the North. But at least some cooling expected, some degree of moisture, a couple of showers and thunderstorms as well on the front side, warmer side. Temperatures easing down, but still above average. And again, heavy to severe showers and thunderstorms. Could be a very violent spell of weather this week from the Dakotas to the upper Midwest, parts of the western and northern Corn Belt locales. Looky here, this kind of trough this time of the year. Here we are into June. This is more or less almost an early spring or late winter setup. And there are tropical rains from Eric coming its way out of Old Mexico on northward. So yeah, there's moisture in the forecast for New Mexico, West Texas, the southern high plains, but probably heavy and severe, and flash flood potential has to be watched as well. That's the story into the early to middle parts of the week. Some of those tropical rains may actually work into the western reaches of Texas, livestock and cattle country. Heavy and severe thunderstorm activity, high plains with cooler, drier air moving into the northern and central areas of the Rockies and points on southward. And yeah, there may be a couple of showers and thunderstorms even in the desert southwest as things dry out into parts of California. A very unusual setup into the southwestern reaches of the country, Mike.
This hot dome over the central part of the country certainly driving some headlines. Greg, how do you see it unwinding or sticking around in the week ahead?
It's going to be relatively short-lived. It is not the hot ridge that we have been talking about. This is in response to those tropical systems coming out of the Pacific, and there's another one in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. The old 588, 594 ridge. When you talk about that and the commodity guys hear that, they know this is 95 to 100 degree heat with dew points in the 70s. Miserable. Keep an eye on crop failure with that shallow root system now in some of these wetter areas of the eastern Corn Belt. Nice to see recent rains in the northern and western areas. These will be violent storms if we can bust that atmospheric cap. This could be a recurring story from Nebraska, ultimately into Iowa, to the upper Midwest, and later in the week, a couple of showers and thunderstorms into the eastern and southern Corn Belt as that hot ridge slowly relaxes and eases on up. Tropical rains from a system way down in the southwestern Gulf making its way through the Rio Grande, and that feature coming off the Pacific as well. Quite an unusual setup. The farther north and northeast you go, the hotter and drier and really more humid it will get into parts of the southern Corn Belt, southeastern plains. This boundary and things kind of retrogressing back to the west as tropical systems come up out of the Gulf. So showers and thunderstorms, flooding potential, Rio Grande, New Mexico area as well, scattered across the plains with the atmosphere still kind of hot and capped off into the Ohio Valley, Mike.
Do you see this heat ridge pushing itself all the way east as the week goes on?
Exactly. 95 to 98 to local 100 degree heat in areas of the eastern and southern Corn Belt, and high humidity, oppressive humidity values. So those heat index values pushing 110, space them out, water them down, as we say on the livestock side. Poultry operations as well into parts of the southern Midwest. Some shower activity and thunderstorms into the northeastern parts of the country. With time, a front will straddle the hot ridges here. Jet stream winds are coming along this boundary, and the potential for more severe weather. Michigan, Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, and points on westward with lodging, blowdown, green snap. Anyway, southern Texas, tropical rains there. The rainy season's into Florida. Nice to see some improvement on the drought monitor. I-4 corridor on southward. The heat wave through the Tennessee Valley into the Ohio Valley. Scattered showers and thunderstorms continue here. More tropical moisture across the Gulf Coast areas, and that heat wave weather pattern running from about the Tennessee Valley northward into much of the eastern through southern Corn Belt locales.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Across America, several of the commodities that we produce have been built with an export market in mind. And as these industries have watched global trade wars and physical wars disrupt trade regimes, it's raised some questions. And that was certainly one of the topics of conversation at the World Pork Expo a few weeks ago in Des Moines, Iowa. And I had the chance to talk with Vice President of Government Relations at the National Pork Producers Council, Maria Ziba, about the impact of these governmental changes on her industry.
Trade is vitally important to our industry. We export over 25% of our production, and that's last year in 2024 was over $8.6 billion to over 100 countries. But the countries that we export the most to are the ones that we have a free trade agreement with. So you think about Mexico, Canada, South Korea, Colombia, the Central American, CAFTA DR. So those are the countries that we're exporting a lot of product to. When you look at what the numbers are this year versus last year, Q1 versus Q2, we're about even. But, you know, there was a lot of announcements on the tariff side, whether they were the IEEPA tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, and those we have faced some retaliation on. So that has an impact on, and we will see what the numbers look like and whether there was an impact.
That's a really good point. And I think all of this tariff conversation has raised some other similar issues into people's consciousness, which are non-tariff barriers.
Yes.
Maria, we've heard this come up recently. It's a long time been an issue in the ag industry. When we hear people talk about non-tariff barriers to pork or to hogs, what kind of a thing would they be talking about?
Well, surprisingly, stuff like ractopamine is still an issue. Taiwan has a number of non-tariff barriers on U.S. pork. They don't want to import, they want testing for ractopamine. They want 100% inspections on all U.S. products. They want country of origin labeling for our products. And so it's quite significant because You can always, the tariffs are that's the first hurdle. But then when you have a country, or in this case Taiwan, as a designated party, they put all these non-tariff barriers. It makes it incredibly difficult to compete because you don't know what else they're going to come up with.
Because they can just pop up
Yes.
at any point. A shipment could be en route and they could change the rules.
Yes, we have seen that in a lot of countries where the product is on the waters and all of a sudden they want inspections. All of a sudden they want new criteria on testing of boxes and product. And that's not only costs money, but it creates an uncertainty that our producers do not need.
Now, we've heard a lot about tariff conversations in the world of international trade. Are you hearing, are the non-tariff barrier conversations also happening, even if tariffs are getting the headlines?
So USTR and the administration are focusing on a number of issues. I can't go into too many of those just because of my cleared status. So there's a lot of conversations. Everything that's in the media is those are the countries that have come to the table, and I think that it's important for countries, if they want to remove tariffs, to come to the table with a good agreement on what they're willing to negotiate on.
That's a really good point, Maria. Now, to turn our attention to another international issue that could become a U.S. issue, New World screwworm.
Yes.
We've heard about this a lot in connection to the beef industry,
Yeah.
but the pork industry is also at risk, correct?
Yes, very much so. We have been following this for a number of years. In fact, NPPC entered into an MOU with the Central American Animal Health Authorities a couple of years ago, and it was mostly at the time to talk about African swine fever preparedness prevention, but we had to pivot from that about a year ago, where we started focusing on the new screwworm and what producers on the ground in Central America could do to prevent the incursion into other countries. Now, over the last few months, this is why it's so important to have a reconciliation bill that it addresses our foreign animal disease issues. But in that reconciliation bill, we have $15 million on the House side that is for feral swine eradication program. And that is a huge vulnerability for us, because as the screwworm is going from Central America, it started off in Panama and it went all the way through, it's now in Mexico. That is going to be a huge vulnerability for us as we look at all those feral swine that are in the Southwest.
All right, so we'll see if that can survive over on the Senate side and make it through to the final reconciliation bill. As you think about policy, you mentioned that reconciliation. What else are you watching on that front as you think that through?
Yeah, so we've done extensive lobbying on a number of issues. The tax provisions from the last tax bill are coming up for expiration in October. NPPC got 100% of what we asked for in the tax bill. It's in the House version, and it makes a lot of those non-permanent programs permanent, and like bonus depreciation and Section 179. And beyond that, we were very successful in getting the animal health provisions included, and that's what, like the feral swine eradication program, but beyond that, the work that we need at our laboratories and vaccine banks and to detect a foreign animal disease.
Well, our thanks to Maria Ziba, Vice President of Government Affairs, the National Pork Producer Council, for that update. Folks, leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we return.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. It was just over a week ago that the EPA released their long-awaited biofuel blending requirements for the nation's fuel supply, the renewable volume obligations, and there was a big boost for biomass-based diesel. To explain what this means for soybean growers and clean fuel producers, joining us now is Kurt Kovarik. He serves as the Vice President for Federal Affairs at Clean Fuels Alliance America. And Kurt, break down these numbers for us. What does this mean for those of us who are providing the feedstocks for these clean fuels?
Yeah, Glad to be with you. This is a huge win for the biomass-based diesel industry, our feedstock providers and processors, including soybean and canola farmers, distillers, corn oil from animal fats and ethanol byproduct. Well, what we saw out of the EPA is essentially what the president committed to do, and that was to help create domestic demand for farm commodities, the ag sector, and rural economies. What we saw for the previous 3 years from the Biden administration was a really lackluster proposal. And what that led to was a lot of uncertainty in our industry, a lot of idling of plants, and quite frankly, shutting down of plants. What we see proposed from the EPA from last week is to really robustly support this industry through a proposal that, in our eyes, looks to support about 5.61 billion gallons of fuel. And this is right in line where the industry was producing in 2024, when we had only a less than 3 billion gallon RVO, so a renewable volume obligation. So what this signal is being sent right now, and you've already seen it in the soy commodity markets. You've seen soy oil jump as a result, and soybean values jump as a result. And what it is it's essentially sending the signal to the market that this administration and this proposal want to support domestically produced biomass-based diesel. That's good for anybody who's providing feedstock, and it's great for anybody who's producing the fuel.
It is indeed. And Curtis, I think over the challenges in that industry over the past couple of years, I understand imported feedstocks have been one of the issues that American producers have been watching for. Did this change any of the way those are recorded?
It absolutely does. And I look at it this way: not just imported feedstock, but imported fuel that is presumably produced from imported feedstock. This administration, in terms of their America First agenda and really kind of an anti-China policy, used the renewable fuel standard for the first time ever to discount by 50% the value of fuel that's produced from either foreign feedstocks or from foreign countries. So it's really placing a premium on domestic feedstocks and domestic production, and supporting the U.S. economy, domestic energy dominance, et cetera.
It's fantastic to see from Clean Fuels Alliance's perspective. What's next? How are you going to continue to fight for this?
Well, we've got a 45-day comment period, which closes early August. We'll be advocating for maintaining the positive policies. We'll be commenting on others, and the administration is committed to have it final by the end of October. So we hope they keep their word. If they do, we'll have great certainty for 2026 and 2027.
Kurt Kovarik from Clean Fuels Alliance America, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Always glad to be with you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Earlier in the show, Greg mentioned the severe weather risk that could be across much of the country next week. Greg, with that risk in place, who could see the moisture?
The significant moisture really in the northern parts of the Corn Belt, the western parts of the complex, some of the still ongoing worst drought areas. But again, you got to pay a price with high wind and hail in this particular corridor. And for some of those storms that rampaged out of eastern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio last week, what do you get out of it? A half inch of rain and 60-mile-an-hour winds and rain-wrapped tornado activity. So that's the story here. There's a lot of jet stream energy still here. Then the tropics are getting busy. Florida, across the Gulf Coast into Texas, and there's a system coming up out of areas of Old Mexico. So the Pacific is quite active. The Atlantic's still quiet. Another trip-off, Mike, that El Nino still into play.
Interesting, Greg. So as you look at that week of the Independence Day holiday, do you anticipate that drought concern coming back as bad as it was earlier?
I don't think so. Again, we've had some moisture gains, so when we're still peddling the last of that hot ridge in this particular part of the country, I think we'll be okay, but sometimes those shallow root systems, moisture in the ground that can't keep up with the moisture draw, and you're moving into that V4, V5 stage, so you get into hail and high wind with severe weather. So you still have to contend with this kind of heat here and triple-digit heat index values. Note the cooling into the western part of the country and a jet stream pattern that's still pretty vigorous as well on the backside of the hot ridge. So look at the severe weather potential from Kansas into the Great Lakes region, the northeast of New England. Nice to see, Mike, on the drought monitor, so improvement to Kansas's drought weather pattern as well.
Indeed, Greg, as you look at the week of July 7th, where do you anticipate that hot ridge to be?
Now here it is beginning to break on down and actually retrograde. Yes, the weather does move west to east. We're going to back it up as systems come over the top of the ridge here. So some of that 95 to 100 degree heat and still ongoing dryness and drought, by the way, here, and probably where we begin to see worsening in the weeks to come. The weather pattern is still busy for the northern and eastern Corn Belt, probably a couple of derechos. Wet weather in the mid-Atlantic region with 2 areas of lowering pressure, the eastern Gulf. The southwest Atlantic is going to be deeper into July and August when that tropical pattern does get going.
Do you start to see it developing by that third week in July, Greg?
We really kind of think so, because 2 things going on here: the heat retrograding back to the west, the jet stream pattern diving on in, some cooling through the upper Midwest, Great Lakes areas. And from a moisture standpoint, yeah, things get a little more interesting. Probably something coming out of the eastern Gulf and off into the central and southern Atlantic. Looks like the Saharan dust situation begins to wind on down, and so we anticipate a rapid succession of these tropical systems are coming off the Atlantic, the eastern Gulf, make their way up the eastern seaboard. So the wet weather pattern continues on Pacific Northwest, northern and eastern Corn Belt, and up and down the eastern seaboard.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, our Farm Progress editors are often out on the road covering big events in the world of agriculture, and executive editor for Prairie Farmer, Holly Spangler, last week had the chance to go to the Illinois State FFA Convention. And Holly, I understand they've got a new member of the officer team.
They sure do. They sure do. Their delegates came together and voted to add a 6th member to their state officer team. So they'll spread some of that work out among all of those 6 young people this year as they travel the state for FFA.
That's fantastic. While you were there, I assume you talked to a lot of the youth. Is there optimism about the future of agriculture from those FFAers?
Yeah, it's hard to find a group of more optimistic people than FFAers, right? So those are kids who have worked hard and they've gotten to that point and they're competing and they're doing their best, and they're in it because they enjoy agriculture and they enjoy what they're doing. So yeah, they're definitely looking forward to the future.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that next generation coming along to support our industry. And Holly, I want to take our attention a little bit south of you to southern Illinois, southern Indiana. I know this past week that area was just inundated with severe weather and moisture. Can you fill us in on what you've heard on the ground?
Yeah, it has just been biblically bad spring in southern Illinois, in terms of the rainfall in many parts of that part of the state. There are parts of southern Illinois that have gotten 40 inches of rainfall already. We're not even halfway through the year, and they've gotten the full annual amount already. And that's coming in 6 to 7, 8 inches at a time. Folks, some places are planted, some places are not. Some places are merged, some places are not, but just generally so soggy overall.
And do you see that extending, really all the way across southern Illinois and into southern Indiana?
Yeah, it's been pretty thorough all the way across. I talk with agronomist Kelly Robertson a lot out of Benton, Illinois, and he works with a lot of farmers across southern Illinois and that whole region and down into Kentucky. And it's just an epic amount of rain that they just can't catch a break, that it just keeps coming. So
it sounds like we are going to see some probably prevent plant acres increasing in that area. Would that be your guess?
Yeah, very possibly, very possibly. They're just trying to get wheat out now too. And Kelly just shared this week that they're starting to see wheat, germinating in the head, which is never a good sign.
No, you get 40 inches of rain and you get the temperatures that we've had, and it makes sense that this crop's going to try to move forward, whether it's in a combine or not. Holly, of course, you'll be covering these impacts on the state of Illinois on Prairie Farmer. Where can folks go to keep up with the news and information in Prairie Farmer magazine?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to prairiefarmer.com and check us out there. And of course, you'll be getting your next issue soon in the mailbox.
Fantastic. Holly Spangler, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. On the road to Rantoul, we're less than 60 days away from the biggest antique farm equipment show in America at Rantoul, Illinois, the Half Century of Progress, where you may get to see Francine. It's a tractor that has been named, and we know that it's a she. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. Our friend Vance Lundell has been working for 40 years, creating those tough polyplastic products to help farming operations work better, work more efficiently. Go to the website and see his product line, LundellPlastics.com. Agribusiness.com. I've known several owners of antique tractors to name their tractors. Francine? Now that's a little bit different, I guess I would say. It's an F20 tractor made in 1939, a Farmall F20. It's owned by John Barons in Hebron, Indiana. Take a look at this tractor. Here's the way he described it. She was pretty good when I got her, but I did give her quite a bit of love. John said he repaired leaks, he replaced seals in the clutch, he rebuilt the front bolster. It was a tractor that came out of the area of Idaville, Indiana, White County, Indiana, I believe it is. And he said, yes, he took care of some cosmetics. But now, Francine? Why Francine? Well, here's the way John explained it. He said, I gave her that name because she's an F series, Francine, and that name fits the 1930s era. It's a 1939 tractor, along with the fact, and I quote John now, she is a stylish, attractive, and classy lady. Francine, you may see her along with John's 1206, perhaps at the Red Power Roundup, and then I would imagine certainly at Rantoul, Illinois, the Half Century of Progress, August 21st through the 24th. Let's go to the Big Iron Report now. Here's Mark Stock.
Well, hello, Max. We're seeing a record number of retirement auctions and quite a few dealer machinery auctions scheduled June 24th, Bilberry Farm Partnership Sale. From Eudora, Arkansas, we'll sell 57 items. Tractors include a John Deere 8320R, John Deere 8310R, Agrivision Equipment Group LLC and Prairie Land Partners LLC, late model John Deere Draper heads, combines, mechanical front tractors, and also on June the 24th, Seeb Farms LLC from Poseyville, Indiana, will sell late model Case IH equipment and a 1976 International 1466 Black Stripe. On Wednesday, June 25th, Lynn and Jan Fry, they are retiring their equipment by Martell, Nebraska. Very well cared for John Deere 9570 combine and a one-owner John Deere 8410 tractor with 5,700 hours. On Thursday, June the 26th, Sinclair Tractor from southeast Iowa, western Illinois, and northeast Missouri will sell 164 late model pieces of machinery. And Brent Rogers Farm Partnership, they are retiring. They have late model Case IH combines, tractors, a very big week of auction action. Every item sells with no reserve.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Gehringhoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Gehringhoff.com. Gehringhoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know past Minnesota State FFA President Lauren Stuhl. Lauren, you recently retired back in April at convention. What were some of the highlights for you of your year of service to the Minnesota FFA?
There were so many amazing things from this past year. My favorite thing was just getting to know all of the members, getting to see what they're doing and what their passions are and inspire them to see what they can do in agriculture and that there is a place for them not only in the FFA organization but in the agricultural world as well.
You know, as you think about the Minnesota FFA organization, are you seeing growth or is there a lot of excitement for the youth to keep wearing those blue jackets?
Yes, there are so many amazing things for every student that we already have, but there's also a lot of changes that come, especially as our membership is growing. We're adding so many more opportunities through events, competitions, leadership opportunities, and so there's always something to look forward to, even if you feel like you've done a lot of it.
All right, go back, take another look. There's more to see. Lauren, what was it that made you want to be a part of FFA so many years ago?
So I knew what FFA was going into my 7th grade year. I knew that it was an agriculture organization and I knew that I loved agriculture from farming with my dad and helping out. But I was very nervous to try something new. I didn't know what all the opportunities were in FFA. I didn't know about the competitions or leadership opportunities. So I was kind of a scaredy cat and avoided it. And then in 8th grade, my friends asked me to join the parliamentary procedure team, and I went to one competition, and that's the rest of it.
Sometimes that's all it takes is just a little bit of experience to whet your appetite. Lauren Stuhl, thank you so much for filling us in this week.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Chad Colby's always bringing us the latest in technology. Sometimes it's a gadget that flies, sometimes it's something you hold in your hand. This time, it's installed on farms.
This week, I had a unique opportunity to learn more from both a grower and our friends at AGI on what kind of new technology they have for your grain bin.
Well, what we're doing is, we have sensors that are in the grain. They're looking at the existing condition of the grain, and that's important. You have to know what the existing condition is. Then all of those sensors come to this control box, and what this does is we have switches in here that operate both fans and a heater, if there's a heater present. That controls it. So what you do is you look at the existing condition of the grain, then you determine the temperature and moisture that you want to optimize. And that you want to optimize for your, depending on the term of storage, your market conditions and so forth. So you set a target temperature and a target moisture. We look at what's the grain already like. There's a weather device that we use. One weather device will run all the clusters, but that's looking at relative humidity and temperature. That's what determines when the fan comes on. After 15 minutes, we go with this plenum sensor down below and we're looking at the same thing because that's the actual air that you're running through the grain. You know, if you squeeze air in a small space like that, you change it. So that's also checking the static pressure of the fan. If the system wants to run the fan and it doesn't detect static pressure after a few seconds, it will send a warning message to your phone, to your email, telling you that your fan's not running and you need to check it out.
Chris, talk about some of this technology that you've implemented. Why did you go this route?
For me, it wasn't worth having a high value commodity in my bin and having it spoil on me. And so I wanted to make sure that it's basically an insurance policy for me. I started working with AGI in 2018 and we went ahead and that was the thing. I first started with those 4 bins over on my first complex, and then every consecutive bin that we put up, we've gone ahead and added the bin manager to it.
Having the information right on your phone, especially during the busy times of the year, that's a no-brainer. But even in the off season, it's got to be nice to be able to check into what's happening in your bin right from your phone.
That's the nicest thing. My wife is from Denmark, and we will travel back to Europe for maybe 2 or 3 weeks in December. And I can sit there and see what's going on my bins. If I have an alert, I can I can bring it to someone's attention here on my farm, and they can go ahead and mitigate that situation. We will check typically monthly. We'll go up and look inside the bins, but this really gives me the peace of mind to know what I'm dealing with. And as you go through this whole process of how the bin dries down, I have these graphs here on my phone that I can start seeing because I'm using high volume air, low temperature heaters, and so you can start watching that bottom layer gets dry, then the top, then the next layer, and it consecutively goes all the way to the top. And that is a really good you're able to see exactly what's happening.
To learn more about this technology, reach out to AGI directly at aggrowth.com, or you'll see them at the Farm Progress Show this fall. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
It is incredible to get on a farm and see how they are utilizing this modern technology. Chad, thank you so much for that update there from AGI. Regular viewers may have noticed some new faces in our market segments recently, and that's because we've been working more with professional ag marketing out of Minnesota. Well, at the World Pork Expo in Des Moines, we had the chance to talk with Luke Wells, one of their risk managers, about what professional ag marketing does across the country.
We're all about helping livestock producers manage risk. We focus on in the hog industry. That's a big part of focus. We also work a lot with cattle producers and row crop producers. But where Laverne, Minnesota would be where our office is. Our reach is across the country. We've got customers out all the way to the East Coast in Pennsylvania and all the way West Coast as far as pigs are, cattle are, and crops are. So, the biggest thing is, today's market, fast paced, lots of moving pieces. It doesn't matter if it's a mega farm or even a mid-sized farm, very capital intense, a lot of risk, a lot of dollars deployed, right? So our job is to understand the markets, the conditions, more so work with our customers and our clients to understand their needs, their goals, their risk tolerances, and then put plans together and help them manage through these volatile times that we have. Volatile times create opportunity and us help them capture the reward.
How can it be an opportunity, or how can we harvest that opportunity as producers?
One of the biggest things is, understanding your cost of production, right? Doesn't matter if you're planting corn or soybeans, raising hogs or raising cattle, right? And then look in the forward curve in the futures market. We've got interesting times right now globally, right? Protein supplies are down across, obviously in the cattle segment, pretty static in the hog segment, poultry meat down, right? Good demand. So we've got nice forward prices. We've got this little trade thing going on with our current administration, right? That affects and changes all waters, right? But we're in a little bit of a pause. There's no safety or security with that, right? But in a little bit of a pause there.
Thank you, Luke, for filling us in. And folks, thank you for joining us today, and be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance, German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.